Every now and then you want a certain model, but the only one you can find is an analog version. Or you have an older analog model and you want to run it on your new digital layout. This video tutorial shows you the installation of a decoder in an analog Märklin locomotive. The following materials are needed for this conversion: an analog Märklin locomotive, a Märklin motor conversion kit, an interface, in this case one from ASUS, a decoder, here we have a ASUS LogPilot 5. In addition, you need various colored wires, two 680 ohm resistors and two white LEDs. As tools you need a soldering iron, screwdrivers, pliers and a decoder programmer. In this case we use a ASUS log programmer. Optionally you need an analog Märklin transformer and a DC power supply. The conversion consists of following steps. The motor is converted to a DC motor. The field coil is replaced with a permanent magnet. The cheap tricks that you read on the net that you connect the field coils to the track by means of a rectifier should be omitted. This would have a negative influence on the driving characteristics. Replace the 3-pole armature with a 5-pole one. This should make the locomotive run smoother. Replace the bulbs with LEDs. The first thing to do is to check that the locomotive runs smoothly. To do this, run it on a test track. In this case, nothing happens. Therefore, we had to find out what the cause is. The next step is to open the housing. With the multimeter, we can see that there is current at the motor. This is the case. Also, the light bulbs light up. Therefore, it is probably a mechanical problem, probably something that is gummed up. This is confirmed in this case when you try to turn the wheels. Nothing can be done, nothing moves. Since we have to take everything apart to rebuild the engine anyway, it's not worth repairing. Therefore, the drive bogie and the motor have to be dismantled. To do this, loosen the two screws on the underside and disconnect the wires. Next, remove the motor shield, field coil and armature. The screws of the motor shield will be used again later, so keep them. And look, now the wheels can be turned. Now you have the opportunity to clean the motor and lubricate the inner gear. Now we are done with the disassembly of the engine. For the rebuilding of this model, we use the Märklin Rebuild Kit for drum collector motors. This has article number 60941. You put the permanent magnet in place of the field coil. Then you put in the armature. This should be lightly lubricated before installation. When you turn it, the wheels should also turn now. Then put the motor shield on the top. Now use the two screws to fix the motor shield. Insert the grounding screw on the upper screw. Now solder both chokes to the motor. The last step is to put in the two brushes. Now we have a working DC motor. First we lubricate all gears. Connect the motor to the laboratory power supply or DC transformator. Just switch it on. The voltage should not exceed 16 volt. Let the motor run for a few minutes in both directions so that the oil is well distributed. Lightly re-oil if necessary. You can also run the whole thing on one track. Now you have to strip the rest of the locomotive. Take out the direction switch, the electronic and the light bulbs. We will need the screw of the direction switch later. The only thing that remains is the cable from the center pickup to the overhead line switch. We also keep the eyelet for the ground connection. Now we put the bogie back in and screw it tight. Since this is a Märklin locomotive, we are using the Märklin cable color scheme. First we use the lamp sockets to mount the LEDs. The LEDs we are using draw 20 mA at 3.2 volt. With an output voltage of 16 volt we need 680 ohm resistors. The resistors are connected to the cathodes. At the anode comes one orange wire each. At the cathode a grey one for the front light and a yellow one for the back light. The resistor should be soldered somewhere in between. So now we can start the decoder installation. We use a Logpilot 5 from ASUS in this case. You can use any other decoder. The step remains the same if you use also an adapter board. We also use a board from ASUS here. We fix it where the direction switch was before with its screw. Then we put the ground connection eyelet back in. Now we have to wire everything. First you put solder on the pads you will need. Then you put the wires. They should be not too long so it stays neat. The red wire is connected to the overhead switch. A brown one to the ground eyelet. A blue one to the left choke, a green one to the right choke, then the two orange wires, one each to the front and the back of the board, then the grey and yellow wire. Before inserting the decoder, check that everything is soldered correctly and there are no short circuits. The center pickup has contact, ground has contact, connection to the motor is okay, no connection between the power supply and the motor. So that's it. Now we can see if everything works. Unpack a test rod and see the locomotive programmer. Now you put the decoder on the adapter. In the log programmer software you first read out the decoder. This works out without problems. Next check whenever the current firmware is loaded. Also okay here, otherwise you should update. Now you program the address, select the motor parameters and log the configuration to the locomotive. Now you can let it run and switch the light on. You can also configure the lights so that you can dim them to simulate high beam. Finally, we insulate the resistor with bonding UV glue. You can also use heat shrunk tubing. Then screw the housing back on. That's it for the conversion. Now we have to set the top speed. This can be done with a test track or in this case with a Pico measuring car. The locomotive is slightly too fast. The original can go 200 km per hour. That's it. As you can see, it's not difficult to install a decoder in a locomotive. If you have any question or comments, please write them in the comments. And if you like these videos, then give it a like, and if you haven't already done so, then subscribe to this channel.